This is Troy again. We're going to be working a little bit more with the calculator, mainly looking at extended operations right now. This is going to be a quick little tutorial just to make sure we understand a couple of extra things about getting things into the calculator in a way that it can understand. As we're looking at these, we're mainly going to be working with exponents and roots. If you happen to run into an equation or a formula where you've got some exponents or roots that you're needing to deal with. Working by example here, one of the first ones that I have, here I've got 5.2 times 10 squared volts, and I need to square the whole thing. Remember, whenever we're working with this sort of a problem, parentheses are used to help group things. So the squared outside the parentheses is saying take all of that stuff inside parentheses and square the whole thing. So as we enter it into the calculator, one of the nice things about scientific calculators is they do have parentheses on them. So you can enter the problem exactly the way it's written down on the paper. The only thing we want to do different is instead of times 10 squared, we're going to use the EE button to enter the exponent for engineering notation. So we're going to enter open parentheses. We can do 5.0, and in place of times 10 squared, I will hit EE and simply put the exponent of 2. Then close the parentheses, and now I want to square the whole thing. So the x squared button on my calculator, that's going to say take whatever you have in the display, which is the x, and square it. So I will square. And if I look up in my display, I see that it has written the problem out correctly, replacing the times 10 squared with an E2. So I've got that in parentheses, I've got squared on the outside of it, and when I hit enter, I'm going to get the result that I need, which is 250. Engineering notation, the exponent they're giving me is a 3, and that tells me that it is kilovolts that's coming back out. So use your parentheses on the calculator. That's the big thing about this particular tutorial lesson. Using parentheses to make sure we get things grouped so that that exponent on the outside is going to apply to the whole thing exactly the way that it needs to. Another problem that is very much along those same lines, here we are given 12 times 10 to the negative 2 amps, and I need to square the entire thing. So again, I'm going to enter it into the calculator the way I see it on paper here. I will open parentheses, 12. In place of times 10, I hit my EE button, and then the negative 2 power, close parentheses, and square the entire thing. As I hit enter, having done that, I'm going to get 14.4. Engineering notation, it's giving me a negative 3, which means we're looking at milliamps. So 14.4 milliamps is the result that I get on that one. This next one is a bit tricky, excuse me, a little bit tricky simply because I don't have parentheses. I do need to take a square root. So we're going to take the square root of 49 times 10 to the negative 3rd ohms. And what I need to realize is that because all of this is under that radical, that square root symbol, there is an implied set of parentheses here. And that's something that's very important to make sure that the calculator gets it correctly. If I just hit the square root symbol, 49 times the 10 to the negative 3, to be honest, it depends on the calculator when we're using that EE button as to how it's going to interpret that. The safest way to do it is to get all of that wrapped up in parentheses because all of that needs the square root to be taken. So that's what we're going to do here. We will start with the square root symbol. Here it is, and it's in yellow, so I've got to hit my shift key. So I'm going to take the square root of parentheses, 49 times 10 to the negative 3rd means EE to the negative 3, and then close my parentheses, remembering that the result is going to be in ohms. In this particular case, I do need to decide where I'm going to round off, so I'll say that's 221.359. It's E to the negative 3, and so that tells me that milliohms. And so I got a long number there as it took the square root of that I'll need to know how many significant digits I need for the application. One more example of this, doing the square root. Again, we want to make sure that the square root is taken of everything that is underneath the parentheses here. So where they tell me to take the square root of 20 times 10 squared watts, I'm going to want to make sure as I enter it into the calculator that I use those parentheses. That makes sure that everything gets the square root taken. So I will enter it as the square root, open parentheses, 20 times 10 squared, close parentheses. And what that's going to give me is 44.721. I've got a long repeating decimal again, so I need to know where it is that I'm going to round that off. Notice that it did give me in the engineering notation e to the 0 power, which means the result is simply watts. I don't need a metric prefix. That's what that 0 exponent represents. So as we're working with the calculator, it's very simple as long as we understand we need to enter things in such a way that those parentheses are being used. That's why they're on the calculator. So go ahead and use them for what they are there for. Keep things grouped together, especially if it's being raised to a power or if you're taking a root. Now, that way we make sure that everything is being operated on and it's not trying to square just part of the value. That we've got it wrapped up in parentheses and it will square or take the square root of the entire value being operated on.